So I'm just getting ready to do my first on-camera interview, my first Skype interview with Lorax2013. Now today I'm going to ask him a series of little questions and yeah, just have a chat basically. So here we go, our first Skype try. So hi Lauren, thank you very much for being here.
Hi Michelle, I'm really glad to be able to talk to you.
Thank you very much for all the videos during, I've watched them for many months and watched them before my fast. I was considering whether or not to fast for a second time, because even after the first time, so many people were saying that was crazy, that was stupid. Then I'm saying, well, I'm going to do another one. Then a lot of my friends almost convinced me that, juice fasting is much better and, water fasting is way crazy. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, why do you think people think water fasting is so freakish?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you see that in so many things that are, used to be considered normal and healthy and natural, and nowadays people just think it's insane. If you, take delivery, if you own gold, that was money for tens of thousands of years, but now you're just a nut if you own gold. And, you're supposed to own little scraps of fiat currency. And fasting, and there are a lot of other spiritual practices that people think are crazy, and even the mainline America probably thinks that meditation is crazy, even though that was another traditional spiritual practice. I guess the bulk of society just always kind of feels threatened by anything that can raise consciousness, and maybe also by things that would deaden consciousness. The bulk of society doesn't want you to do really bad drugs either. So I think the bulk of society just is at a certain level, and they feel threatened by anything that challenges that level, either good or bad. I've wondered about the same thing myself, and that's kind of the only answer I can come up with.
And this is, and I've listened to your video, and I've experienced fasting myself. I'm day 21 on a fast, and I'm doing, wonderfully myself. I've seen my skin get better, and I've seen all the progress in general. Now, if I am convinced, and
Yeah,
thousands are convinced,
great. You don't look like you're falling over or anything.
that's what most people say, which helps, support the non-freakish thing, And that's the other thing, it's very contagious. I think by, for you doing a video, for other people doing videos, and just generally chatting about it, people, hopefully that's the way things will start to sway. When I was doing a little bit of research and I contacted you initially, I sent you a very small web clip. I'm not sure if you watched it or not. It was just a 2-minute thing, but it was a doctor on, it could have been Fox or a Fox affiliate, but essentially it was someone saying that fasting is completely unproven and completely, it's impossible, not impossible, that it's healing and all that kind of stuff. But, the question I have is, it's funny, I almost know the answer, but I want to ask you anyway. Why does the medical culture, why do they not want for people to know the truth as something as simple as just don't eat, drink water, rest, and a lot of things will clear up? Why are they hiding this?
Yeah, I saw that video clip this morning, and several of the doctor's other video clips, and they were all just repeating. Well, first of all, he was addressing non-issues really, but I guess the medical community just they want to foo-foo anything that there's no money in fasting, as you already mentioned, and they don't like to put a lot of attention on it, and if they do put any attention on it, they just repeat the conventional wisdom. It's interesting that when I saw that doctor's clip, he didn't refer to any study, or the actual studies showed, animal studies. I don't think they've ever really done a complete study on human fasting, but the animal studies show that fasting is healthy, and there's really no final conclusive proof as to why that is. There are different theories, but the doctor just made some general statement. Oh, there's no proof that fasting, or he didn't even say there's no proof. He said fasting does not help detox. There's no study to support that statement. He's just repeating a wives' tale basically, or he's repeating conventional wisdom in society. I'm sure he's never done a fast himself either, and noticed whether or not there are symptoms that would indicate detox. And it's unfortunate that so many people who hide behind the guise of science and repeat these statements, and not even in a scientific manner, like we don't currently have any proof one way or the other about fasting. That might be something that you could vaguely support with science, but just to make a statement that fasting, doesn't help you detox, there's no scientific proof one way or the other about that, I don't think. Other than, as I said, the animal studies would show it's healthy, and again, fasting isn't really studied because there's no money in it. So yeah, it's unfortunate that the scientific community so often just, and it's historically been this way. Every new any new knowledge that comes into science is always initially challenged. Yeah, the Earth revolving around the sun was initially challenged by the scientific community, and any new knowledge is always going to be challenged by society, and the scientific community is just another part of society. And unfortunately, sometimes they fall away from being scientific and just fall into repeating things without proof.
It seems I've in my research I found a lot about a Dr. Shelton, who I guess was one of the pioneers in the hygiene movement or hygienist movement or hygiene movement, and it's like late 1800s, and he would have been popular in the 1920s. And I think he had been arrested many, many, many times for helping people fast, and I think one person actually had died in his care. And for some reason, it seems that the more popular the healing or the more it works, you can see that there's someone going to prison. Like somehow there's so much suppressed medical information, whether it be aspartame or additives in the water, all these things that for some reason have been elevated to the word conspiracy and the negative aspect of it. And I find it really, really strange now. It seems that every time I see the medical community saying something is extremely bad, I look twice because I think they're so it's getting so ridiculous and so burlesque almost that there seems to be truth coming out of, like, they're really scrambling to keep that veil up. So it's true that there's no money in fasting, and there's no money in perhaps eliminating aspartame, and there's no money in many things like that. What do you think in society is going to be the tipping point where people will, I don't know, something is going to have to happen where people realize that we've been lied to with so many things, even as things as simple as fasting? Is it going to take medical research? Because I don't expect that to happen. Like, there's no money, so... Right?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's an ongoing. We see it now as an unusual situation, but maybe there's always been this ongoing situation of profit versus what's right. I remember reading about hundreds of years ago when doctors first discovered that food has calories. They hadn't discovered vitamins yet, but they had discovered that food has calories. And so the medical community ran around telling everyone, you need to eat only high-calorie food, because now we know why food is good. It has calories in it, so you should only eat meat and sugar and nothing else. Vegetables are low-calorie. They're a bad food. And a lot of people actually died. There's one of the kings of England, they theorized that part of the reason he died early was that he was following this advice. And that went on for decades, I think, the medical community believing this and believing that they understood everything about food. So maybe it's just always kind of been an ongoing thing that there's always been people that are going to take advantage and try to dupe the less knowledgeable segment of society, and then gradually society catches on to that scam, and then a new scam comes along. But it does seem to be particularly bad and getting a lot worse in the last few decades. But hopefully with the internet, a lot of knowledge is getting out in many fields, and in the field of diet as well. I don't think it can go on too long. I mean, people are eating so unhealthy now that the society just isn't going to regenerate itself properly. Already, native-born Americans who are growing up eating this diet, we have a declining population and a declining society in general. We have to constantly have immigration from areas where people have grown up eating a healthy diet who actually have enough energy to work and regenerate our society. I think that's part of the reason you see so much immigration to Western countries.
Thank you. it is a tough subject, and I do agree and hope, rather, that the internet, or generally a feeling of we're learning from each other, it's seemingly at a faster rate, and yes, that it's getting to a point where there's just so much diabetes, for example, in my family in particular, that something has to hit where people are just going to realize, like, wow, this 15 years ago, you can remember that it wasn't like this. So hopefully the acceleration of those two things, of the problems and the knowledge, will help. In your fasting video, you actually started out, and I think it was a big focus of the video, was talking about how toxins affect the body, affect the mind, and especially affect consciousness and higher consciousness, or people striving to achieve a higher consciousness, or maybe just a higher awareness, perhaps another way of saying it. One of the things that I really found amazing was your take on déjà vu and looping songs in our minds and things like that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I was amazed when I first heard that. That's not my original theory. I heard that from some paleo diet people. That when you're eating an all raw paleo diet, that goes away. And I kind of thought, because at the time I had been on a mostly raw food diet for a year or so, and I was getting into paleo diet, and I thought, oh yeah, you're right. I haven't had deja vu for a year or two now, and I don't have that song repetition in my head. I never would have even realized it if the people hadn't told me that. And then I kind of realized that, wow, it must be something in the food that gives you this kind of repetition in your mind, and that kind of also instills a rigidity in your thinking, because everything's looping back in your mind constantly, and it becomes harder to accept new ideas, I guess. So that's how I originally got the idea. It wasn't my original idea, but it is something that I notice, and it's something that a lot of other people notice, that apparently something in the food. And my theory is that it's maybe a lot of it is just toxins that are a byproduct of cooking, and also neurotoxins that are produced by bacterial or fungal decay in food, or bacterial and fungal byproducts that are fed to animals that we then ingest. That kind of causes a rigidity in your thinking, or this looping process, which you see as deja vu, or repeating a song in your head, and that kind of affects your whole consciousness. It gives you a more rigid type of thinking, not as open, not as creative, not as open to inspiration. At least that's kind of what I notice, and it's what other people notice as well.
I thought it was fascinating because it tied into, I think, a bigger reality of my life in the past few years. I had lived in Thailand for 2 years and then came back to Canada. And when I came back to Canada, I was completely out of the loop when it came to pop culture, and everyone's talking about even someone like Rihanna, or artists that seemingly everyone knew. And then all my friends would get into the car and turn on the radio, and it'd be that same song playing over and over again, and go to the store and buy the same foods with all the same additives. And it seems to be a compounded effect of repetitious music, repetitious songs, those are the same visuals, and it's a highly complex web. But it's interesting that I do feel that with fasting, it's that first little thread for me that actually kind of pulled that web, and it was many years ago with just a liver flush. So when you had done your first fast, was there anything that you remember in specific that clicked, or maybe wasn't so dramatic for you?
It's been so long ago now. I just remember that, yeah, during the fast, and mostly during the fast, that it just felt like a sort of a higher level of inspiration and creativity. I could tell that I was thinking in a very different and in many ways better way, that just more creative, a little more inspired. So I continue to fast every year. I generally do a 1 week fast at least, and I always kind of notice that I get my best ideas for the year often during those fasts.
I agree. Fasting is very much like meditation for me, and in fact, using both is quite powerful. When it comes to fasting and higher consciousness, Um, and you're saying that it does inspire creativity and all those things, and I see that in myself. But there's that other little aspect that's not positive on the get-go. There's all of these emotions that come up, and you speak of that in a little bit more detail about when we do achieve a higher consciousness, there's something else that happens, and sometimes it's negative. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, one of my last videos I talked about that, how, basically higher consciousness, if it was all fun and easy and great, everybody would be doing it, in my opinion. Um, when you achieve a greater level of insight, one of the problems is that everything that you've been repressing comes up, and that's basically what the whole field of psychology is about, how we repress everything and how you eventually have to try to work through that. And anything that elevates your consciousness is going to make you more aware of everything that you've been repressing. And not everybody represses things, and there are things that we'd rather not deal with. But as you develop a higher level of consciousness, in my opinion, it becomes harder to repress that. And so then you have to deal with it. Why am I angry about this or that? Why do I feel guilty about this or that? I used to be able to just kind of shove that under the rug and not think about it. So to me, part of this process of maintaining a higher level of consciousness, it has to be built on a foundation of actually getting to the root of these psychological issues and kind of working through them. I guess a little bit about similar to how psychology ideally would operate, that you just get to the root of the problems and deal with them.
Mm. And you also mentioned, and I just want to strike on that one a few seconds, but some people actually who can go too far with fasting or get locked into the habit of fasting or use it as some other method, that also can be dangerous. And it's difficult for me. I don't know if you've received these emails, but you get a 16-year-old girl who has her prom coming up in 3 weeks, and she wants to lose 50 pounds. She's still going to school, and she wants to start fasting. And this is so far from the realm of resting and consciousness and toxin removal. I still don't know how to deal or handle these things. Am I supposed to say fasting is no good? And so far I've just been trying to say, you have to be able to rest and all these things. But have you had or known fasting for adolescents or things like that? Do you know of anyone that has had good results with that? Or it's badly
Actually, I've never gotten an email like that. That would be I'd have to think about that one for a minute. It doesn't seem like the right reason. But yeah, I don't know right off what I would say, other than what I say in the video. I really like to stress that if your body is telling you, strongly not to do this, then I think you've pushed yourself too far. And I think a lot of people do push themselves too far with fasting and with a lot of other things. They have this preset ego-driven goal, and they're going to override whatever their body is telling them and whatever their intuition is telling them. And I guess someone that's fasting to lose weight for the prom is they've got this preset goal. They're going to fast until they lose 40 pounds or whatever, and they're not going to listen to what their body's telling them. So yeah, that's all I can really say, is that I feel it's really important for people to listen to their body and listen to their intuition when they're doing anything, and not do it based on an ego-driven goal.
I agree. Well, there's a little voice in me that says, I don't know, that fasting even for the wrong reason, as long as you listen to your body. Let's say someone just strictly wants to lose weight, and they do rest and they do everything well, they listen to their body, if hunger comes back and all that. That thread, that conscious thing is still going to be pulled. It's my theory of, I have an online yoga studio, and I don't advertise things like yoga for better butt, yet I know that would bring in a lot of traffic. But my idea is that even if someone does yoga for better butt, you're still in the direction of putting yourself in the way of good. But when it comes to, the prom coming up in 3 weeks, that's a whole other realm. But there's a subtlety there that I'm still trying to grasp. And I don't know why I get those emails, but I've two a week of like 17-year-old college kids that I have finals coming up, but I think I can fast now, things like that. And then the whole idea of what we've talked about, of sometimes the bodies are so filled with toxins, and you mentioned very clearly about the headaches and things like that in your other videos, that not most kids, but some kids, a lot of kids are probably raised with a lot of junk food these days. And someone who would try a fast, I don't even know what would happen. I've been working up to this for 8 years now. I mean, once a year, and been eating organic and whatnot. But it's so much information to get across to someone. Like, wow, you might get really sick, and so you do have some great other videos. I just want to mention those, and I'll link to them here. Food and Intelligence, Diet Intelligence, and Media Propaganda. And you also have a book. I feel like, it's Leatherman, and I'm holding up your album. I bought your book, but it's digital, so I can't hold it up. And I promise not to put it on a download or torrent somewhere. The book is The Real Story of Money, Health, and Religion. And it's not that expensive, at $1.25. It's available at lulu.com, but I'll link to it directly. I bought it, and although I am Canadian, and I have been watching a lot of YouTube clips and different things about the monetary system and all of its implications, the book really was. It's a short book, but it's so precise and so clear, like most of your videos, that was really, really a good read. So I highly suggest it to anyone, and I'd like to thank you for the books and the videos.
I think it's great that you're providing the service and getting so much information out. I mean, if you're getting emails every week about fasting, you're getting out the message a lot more than me. I probably get one email a month about fasting off of that video that I made.